We live in a time where sharing has become second nature. Our thoughts, our emotions, and yes, even our personal stories. But there's wisdom in restraint. Not every chapter of your life is meant to be an open book for the world to read. Don't Tell Everyone Your Story isn't about secrecy, it's about power. Your story is sacred. It's the sum of your struggles, victories, lessons, and dreams. When you share it too freely, you may be giving people the power to misjudge, misuse, or even manipulate you. Guard your narrative like a treasure. Share it with those who have earned your trust, those who care about your growth, not your gossip, because in silence there is strength, in privacy there is peace. And in discretion, there is dignity. It's a comforting thought to believe that everyone we meet has our best interests at heart, but unfortunately, that's not the reality. The world is filled with a wide range of people, some kind, some neutral, and some who carry envy, resentment, or ill will. When you openly share your story with everyone, especially the deeply personal parts, you run the risk of exposing yourself to people who may not value your vulnerability. In fact, they may see your openness as an opportunity, not to connect with you, but to use your experiences against you. There are individuals who appear to listen, but only to collect information they can later weaponize. They may twist your words, exaggerate your hardships, or repeat your story to others without your consent, all for gossip, clout, or personal gain. And worse, when these individuals share your story, it's often without the empathy, context, or care that it deserves. Your pain becomes their entertainment. Your authenticity becomes their talking point. People with hidden agendas can also use your story to manipulate you emotionally. They may pretend to care, but they're really measuring your weakness, figuring out how to control you, or waiting to see you fail. What starts as an innocent conversation can easily become the root of betrayal, judgment, or unnecessary drama. That's why it's essential to be discerning about who you open up to. Trust should be earned, not given freely just because someone is willing to listen. Some people ask questions not out of concern, but curiosity. Some nod in empathy while secretly feeling superior to your struggles, and some will offer fake support just to keep tabs on your life, only to use it as ammunition when the time suits them. You deserve to be surrounded by people who genuinely care, who protect what you share, and who don't see your life story as gossip fuel. Until you're sure you've found those people, it's better to stay guarded, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. When you share your personal story with too many people, or with the wrong people, you open yourself up to being misunderstood, mislabeled, or even judged unfairly. Oversharing is often driven by a desire to connect, to be understood, or to offload emotional weight. But not everyone has the emotional intelligence, patience, or depth to comprehend the full complexity of your experiences. As a result, they might hear a single moment from your past and let that define their entire perception of you. The truth is, human beings are quick to form opinions. We're wired to make snap judgments, even when we don't have the full picture. So, when you casually mention a mistake you made, a failure you experienced, or a difficult phase you went through, people might reduce you to just that one moment. They may not see the growth, the lesson learned, or the resilience it took to move forward. They only see the flaw. For instance, if you share that you once struggled with addiction, financial problems, or a toxic relationship, someone might quietly decide you're irresponsible, unstable, or naive. They might never say it to your face, but that perception colors how they interact with you, how they talk about you to others, and how much respect they give you. And often, you won't even know it's happening. What's even more concerning is that these judgments can become permanent in the minds of others. While you're evolving and rewriting your story day by day, they're still stuck on the version of you they heard about in that one conversation. They've locked you into a chapter you've long since closed because they don't care to turn the page with you. Oversharing also strips away your ability to control the narrative. When you give too much information too freely, you leave no space for people to discover who you are today. You load them with assumptions based on who you used to be. You rob yourself of the chance to be seen with fresh eyes. Even well-meaning people can misinterpret your story if they don't have the emotional maturity to hold it with the sensitivity it deserves. Some may offer unsolicited advice or project their own issues onto your situation. Others may compare your pain to theirs, minimizing your experience because it doesn't fit into their personal frame of reference. In short, the more you share without discernment, the more room there is for others to misread you, to put you in a box, or to treat you based on one piece of your past rather than the full, evolving person you are. Misjudgment can be quiet, subtle, and long-lasting, and once it takes root, it's hard to undo. It's important to remember that your life is a journey, not a finished product. When you're in the middle of a difficult experience, or even just starting to make sense of it, sharing too soon can be more harmful than helpful. That's because what you're going through may still be raw, unresolved, or emotionally charged. You're still collecting lessons, still discovering what it all means, and still healing from wounds that haven't fully closed. When you tell your story prematurely, you risk being defined by a version of yourself that's still forming. People may lock you into an identity based on your current confusion, pain, or uncertainty, without ever seeing who you'll become once you grow through it. They'll see your mess, but not your mastery. They'll hear your heartbreak, but not your healing. There's a certain vulnerability in sharing a story that hasn't reached clarity or closure. When you're still emotionally entangled in an experience, your perspective is more likely to be reactive, unfiltered, and incomplete. You might say things you later wish you hadn't, or reveal details that don't reflect the full truth, just your current emotional state. And once it's out there, you can't take it back. Others may remember and repeat your words long after you've outgrown them. In some cases, speaking too soon can even delay your healing. When you talk about a struggle before you've processed it fully, you risk reliving the pain over and over instead of working through it. The constant retelling can trap you in the same mental and emotional loop, preventing closure and clarity. What you needed was reflection and solitude, but what you chose was exposure, and that exposure can complicate your ability to truly move forward. Also, when others hear your unfinished story, they often feel compelled to insert their opinions, judgments, or solutions, even if they don't understand your situation deeply. This can cloud your own thinking and make it harder to hear your inner voice. You may begin second, guessing yourself, reshaping your narrative to fit someone else's expectations or criticisms, rather than owning it from a place of confidence and truth. In contrast, when you wait, when you give yourself time to gain insight, peace, and a clearer perspective, your story becomes something far more powerful. It evolves from a cry for help into a message of strength. It shifts from confusion to clarity, from reaction to reflection. And when you finally choose to share, you do so with intention, knowing that your words can help, inspire, or uplift others, not simply offload your burden. Your story isn't over. The chapter you're in today might not make sense yet, but in time it will. Let the pages turn naturally. There's power in patience and wisdom in waiting until the story you tell reflects not just what you've been through, but who you've become because of it. In a world that constantly pressures us to be open, transparent, and real, we often overlook the quiet strength of privacy. Holding certain aspects of your life close to your chest isn't a sign of weakness or dishonesty. It's a powerful form of self-respect. When you choose not to share every detail of your journey with the world, you're creating a protective barrier around your mental and emotional well-being. That barrier is called peace. Peace is fragile. It's built in silence, nurtured in solitude, and sustained through boundaries. The moment you start letting too many voices into your personal space, especially ones that haven't earned the right to be there, you risk disturbing the calm you've worked so hard to find. Every opinion, judgment, or unnecessary comment becomes a ripple in your internal stillness. People often speak casually without understanding the depth of what you're going through. They might offer shallow advice, ask invasive questions, or respond in ways that leave you feeling exposed or invalidated. And even if their intentions are good, their presence in your private matters can still feel intrusive. When you open your life to too many people, you create space for their projections, their doubts, and their assumptions to creep into your mind. This can leave you feeling overwhelmed, second, guessing your decisions or questioning your worth. Privacy, on the other hand, allows you to process your experiences at your own pace, in your own way. It gives you the freedom to feel deeply without performing those emotions for others. It gives you the time to reflect, heal, and understand without being interrupted by other people's narratives or expectations. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to justify your actions. You simply exist in your truth, untouched by outside noise. In that protected space, you're better able to hear your own voice. You begin to notice what you need, what you value, and what actually brings you peace, rather than what looks good on the outside. Privacy acts as a filter, helping you determine which parts of your story are sacred and which are meant to be shared, and with whom. Not everyone deserves access to the most personal parts of your life simply because they ask or because you feel pressure to be open. Protecting your peace also means protecting your energy. When you keep certain aspects of your life private, you conserve the emotional energy that would otherwise be spent on defending, explaining, or managing other people's reactions. You stay focused on your path, your healing, and your purpose, without unnecessary distractions. In the end, privacy isn't about secrecy, it's about self-preservation. It's the decision to keep certain parts of your story sacred, not hidden. And in doing so, you create a quiet space within yourself where peace can thrive, far from the noise of public opinion. One of the most draining things you can do, especially when you're going through something personal, is try to explain yourself to people who don't truly understand you. When you constantly feel the need to defend your choices, justify your feelings, or narrate every part of your story to others, you're expending valuable energy that could be used for something far more meaningful: healing. Healing is a deeply personal, internal process. It doesn't thrive in spaces where you feel scrutinized, interrogated, or judged. It requires emotional safety, self-reflection, and, most importantly, the ability to focus inward. But when you're constantly telling your story to others, especially those who haven't earned your trust or who simply don't have the depth to receive it, you disrupt that inward focus. Instead of prioritizing your well-being, you're pulled into a cycle of explaining yourself to people who may not even be listening with compassion or care. Many people will ask about your pain out of curiosity, not concern. They want the story, the drama, the details, but not the responsibility of holding space for your healing. They don't offer support, just reactions. They ask for honesty, but respond with judgment or unsolicited opinions. And each time you explain yourself to someone who doesn't really get it, you chip away at your own sense of peace. Even worse, when you share too much too soon, you may find yourself adjusting your narrative to suit what others want to hear. You start editing your truth, softening your pain, or over-explaining your growth, all in an effort to be understood or accepted. This doesn't help you heal, it distracts you from healing. It shifts your attention outward when it should be focused inward. Explaining also invites interference. Once people feel like they know your story, they often feel entitled to weigh in on your life. They give advice you didn't ask for. They analyze your motives without understanding your history. They offer solutions that are more about their comfort than your needs, and suddenly, your healing process is no longer yours. It becomes a public discussion, a committee decision, a topic for debate. But true healing doesn't need a spotlight. It happens in quiet moments, in honest reflection, and in spaces where you're free to feel without being questioned. It happens when you allow yourself to be vulnerable with yourself first, before anyone else. When you protect your energy from the exhausting need to explain, you reclaim that energy for something infinitely more valuable: growth. You begin to spend that energy learning from your experience rather than narrating it. You pour it into practices that nourish your soul: rest, therapy, journaling, prayer, meditation, creating, or simply sitting with your emotions without having to translate them into words for others. You learn that the most profound parts of your healing don't need to be spoken aloud to be valid. They just need to be felt, embraced, and honored in silence. Sharing your story can be one of the most empowering and liberating things you ever do, but only if it's done at the right time and with the right person. Timing and trust are everything when it comes to opening up about your life. When you speak too soon or confide in someone unworthy of that trust, the very act of sharing can turn into a source of regret, anxiety, or pain. There's a deep difference between talking and being heard. You can tell your story to 100 people, but if none of them truly listen, if none of them truly see you, then what's the point? It becomes a transaction, not a connection. The right person to share your story with isn't just someone who's available, curious, or nearby. It's someone who listens with empathy, who honors your vulnerability, who holds your experiences with care instead of judgment or pity. It's someone who knows how to receive your truth without making it about themselves. Likewise, the right time to share isn't always when the emotion is at its peak. Sometimes we feel a strong urge to talk when the pain is fresh because we want immediate relief. We want someone to take the weight off our shoulders, to validate us, or to offer comfort. But that urge can lead us to share prematurely, before we've had the chance to understand what we're going through ourselves. And when we do that, we risk misrepresenting our own truth or giving people access to a story that we haven't fully owned yet. When you wait for the right time, you give yourself the space to reflect and gain clarity. You're able to speak from a place of strength instead of desperation, from insight rather than impulse. The story you tell becomes less about needing approval or comfort and more about expressing your truth with confidence. It transforms from a cry into a declaration, from a wound into wisdom. Additionally, the right person won't rush your story. They won't push you to speak before you're ready or expect you to tell them everything all at once. They'll respect your pace, your privacy, and your process. They understand that trust is not owed, it's earned, and that your story is something sacred, not casual. These are the people who listen not just to your words, but to your silences. They ask questions with care. They protect your story even after the conversation ends. Sadly, many people share deeply personal parts of themselves with those who haven't earned that level of access. They confuse availability with trustworthiness, or they mistake attention for understanding. But not everyone who smiles at you deserves to know what made you cry. Not everyone who asks about your life has the maturity or integrity to handle the answers. When you choose the right time and the right person, something powerful happens. Your story becomes safe in someone else's presence. You're not just speaking. You're being heard, held, and honored. You no longer feel exposed, but understood. And that kind of sharing, that kind of connection can be profoundly healing. In an age where oversharing is normalized and privacy is often mistaken for secrecy, maintaining an air of mystery about your life is a quiet kind of power. There's something profoundly compelling about a person who doesn't reveal everything, someone who walks with confidence, grace, and self-assurance, but doesn't feel the need to broadcast every detail of their journey. Mystery isn't about hiding, it's about preserving. It's about recognizing that your story is sacred and not everyone is entitled to every part of it. When you keep certain things to yourself, you create a space of quiet authority. People are naturally curious. They want to know what you've been through, what makes you tick, what your scars and victories are. But when you choose not to explain everything, you leave room for dignity. You allow others to engage with you in the present moment, not through the lens of your past mistakes, trauma, or hardships. Your identity becomes rooted in who you are now, not just what you've survived. This sense of mystery also encourages deeper, more meaningful connections. When people don't have instant access to your entire narrative, they must invest time, care, and patience to get to know you. And in that slow unfolding of trust, you can better discern who truly values your presence and who simply wants your story for their curiosity or entertainment. It becomes clear who is genuinely interested in you, not just your drama, not just your vulnerability, not just your content. Moreover, mystery protects your energy from being constantly evaluated, analyzed, or discussed. In a world where everything from your past relationships to your family history can be dissected by others, keeping things to yourself creates a buffer against outside noise. You don't have to clarify, defend, or explain your every move. You simply exist, free from the exhausting cycle of justification and overexposure. Your silence speaks for you, and often it speaks louder and with more impact than 1,000 explanations ever could. There's also an undeniable beauty in allowing your life to reveal itself in layers at your own pace. Think of your story like a book. If someone skips straight to the final chapter or reads only the most dramatic parts, they miss the nuance, the build-up, the complexity that makes the story truly powerful. When you withhold certain parts of your journey, you're not being evasive. You're inviting people to respect the rhythm of your narrative, to meet you where you are rather than where you've been. And let's not forget that mystery isn't just about others, it's about you too. It gives you permission to evolve without being boxed in by a story you told years ago. You are always growing, always becoming. When you keep your story close, you allow yourself to change freely without being held hostage by the version of you that others think they know. That freedom is priceless. Mystery allows you to move through the world with control over your narrative. You get to decide what to share, when to share it, and with whom. That selective sharing doesn't make you dishonest. It makes you wise. Because while transparency can be powerful, discernment is divine. And when you choose mystery, you remind yourself and others that your story is yours to tell, not theirs to assume.